And sometimes what I'll do now, I'll write negative things on a piece of paper. I'll scrumple it and I'll throw it in the bin. The negative stuff, scrumple it, put in the bin.
Yeah.
I used to set fire to it.
Yes,
yeah. But I had a bit of a bad experience, nearly burnt the kitchen down. So, so I don't do that anymore.
What I love about this podcast is I can meet people from the other side of the world, completely different upbringing, but the commonality of sport brings us together. And there are so many great lessons in this chat with Phil Henderson. Finding what you do well and using that as your path to success, making sure you have structure in your life, and you can apply that to sport, you can apply that to your work, to everything, and how important that is. And the biggest one is having powerful reasons why that are going to get you up in the morning, that are going to keep you moving forward. I really hope you enjoyed this one as much as I did. I'm Ian Hawkins, and this is Sport is Life. The purpose of sport, as I see it, is to see your vision become a reality, find your voice, create strong connections, and learn to trust your body. G'day, Phil. How are you?
I'm good, Ian. How's you?
Really good, thank you. Coming from the other side of the world to me.
Yeah.
Good Geordie accent. Are you actually in Newcastle now, or you live elsewhere?
No, I've not lived in Newcastle now for nearly 36 years. I live north of Glasgow in Scotland. I've got a lovely little village here with a little trout stream behind the house. So it's a complete difference from where I was when I grew up in Newcastle.
Yeah,
so
wow.
No more concrete jungle.
Yeah. And trout stream, like you can literally just go down to your...
It's 20 yards. I've got down there, go and get some fish for the barbie, as you say, barbecue as we say. It's something I've always dreamed of. It was funny growing up in Newcastle in that concrete jungle. My parents always instilled the fact that we could get out of there, and we did. So twice a year we came up to the Trossachs, which is just up here, basically, right next to here, not far from where we are now. And one of the dreams was always to have a little trout stream behind the house. It's there, sitting right behind the house. So
good.
It is so good. Yeah, we're blessed, really blessed.
Does it freeze over?
Not too bad. It's one of the fastest flowing rivers in Europe. It's called the River Glazet, and we get sea trout and salmon up here as well. Wow. But it's rapid at the minute. It's like the North Sea at the moment. The speed of it is really rapid. So it's a bit of a spate river, but it's historic because we live in a place called Milton of Campsie, which means mill town. And what they did is they diverted the river and straightened it to make the speed of the river so much faster to speed up the mill wheel. Yeah. So you can see where I walk the dog, you can see where the old river used to go, the old river course, amongst the deer and all the other good stuff, the nature. But you can see where they've straightened the river and they've put stone either side just to force it through to speed up the mill wheel. So yeah.
Wow.
There you go.
As long as the trout keep coming through, we're all good, right?
They keep coming through, the sea trout keep coming through, and we've got a fair bit of them, so it's all good.
Yeah. Magic. Sounds so good. Now, we connected to get you on this pod because you said boxing had saved your life.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what was going on in your life that led you down that track to finding boxing?
Yep, and I'll mention the people as well who helped me along the way. So getting back to that, the concrete jungle, I grew up in a little village called Newburn, and it's where the Scots fought the English. So we had it wasn't sectarianism as such, but you had this thing between the English and the Scots kind of thing. And you had other people coming from other areas, so a lot of Irish there, a lot of Welsh there, from different areas. Quite a bit of engineering by that time. So I was born in the 60s. And as a family, we grew up in a street of houses. I was literally born 400 yards from the River Tyne, so proper Geordie, in this place called Newburn. So there's streets of houses running down towards the river. Either side of the streets was my family. So we had, I think it was 16, 19, 21, and 24 was the houses. We had a fish and chip shop, and we had a corner shop, and it was people that we grew up with. So we had to move from one house, and we had to move from a house to a flat because unfortunately, my father lost his work in engineering. So we lived above a fish and chip shop for a while, which probably wasn't the best thing for me because I was a bit obese in them days as well.
Right.
And then things got really bad. And unfortunately, I moved from that house to a council house, which was the concrete jungle we moved into. And it was a place that was full of all sorts of outcasts from all parts of the northeast of England. It's 7 miles west of Newcastle. and we lived on the first floor of this 6-apartment type block, and there's loads of these blocks around about. It was picturesque. I mean, we could see the River Tyne with beautiful views, but not when you got close to it. It was pretty rough.
Yeah.
And we had this strip of shops, 4 shops, the hairdressers, the newsagents, the greengrocers, the corner store, just the usual, you know. And it was pretty weird. A 1 telephone box. We didn't have mobile phones back in them days, you know. And the first day I moved into that estate, I met the McGuigan family, and I think I was about 6 or 7 year old. And the 2 brothers at that time decided that they didn't like us, so they beat us up. Because I was fat and I didn't talk proper Geordie. My mum spent a lot of time educating me and trying to get me to speak properly and things like that. So I did. They used to call me Charleston because I used to speak a little bit proper. I didn't speak proper Geordie. So right. It was elocution lessons and things like that. And that doesn't mean I can change a plug. I mean, elocution lessons as in, you wouldn't believe it now, but that's what it was. Yeah. So I met these 2 guys, and they actually become like brothers now. They are like brothers to me now. There's 3 of them, and they are the closest thing I have to brothers. In fact, my mum and dad, my mother and father, tried to adopt Dominic. And the interesting thing about Dominic is Dominic was the bully of the estate. He was a small, tough, rugged Irish stock. And how we got into boxing was, we always seemed to be fighting. Every Sunday we'd be fighting. And this one day I had my skateboard. When the first time skateboards came out, I had my skateboard. And I went to hit him with the skateboard because I had enough. And the next thing I remember, I was on my back waking up going, what the hell happened? He hit me hard, he hit me fast. And I said, right, okay, let's not do this. How do you do it? And I didn't say them sort of words, but it was like, come on, how are you doing this to me? He went, I do boxing. I went, well, what's that? Now, I didn't realise at the time until I started, and a few weeks after, that my grandfather was quite a decent boxer in the northeast of England. It was just, he died 3 days after I was born. It was never mentioned. My father done a little bit. But Dominic, he says, well, come along with me. Let's go to this boxing club. And we went to this place called Granger Park, which was about 6 miles east of where we lived. And bus fare in them days wasn't expensive. But for a family that didn't have much, basically, we used to run to the boxing. Instead of being able to get on the bus, we used to run to the boxing. Yeah. Which caused all sorts of problems when we got a little bit older, because we'd get chased by the locals heading backwards. So we went to boxing, and I started off a few lessons. I was massive. I was about 10 stone, a 10-year-old. I was a big, obese kid. Boy, yeah. Within a year, I was down to 7 stone 11, 7 stone 12. I had my first fight. The eve of my first fight, I was in Newcastle Exhibition Park and met Henry Cooper, who wished me well, and I got beat by 1 pint my first fight. But anyway, that's by the by. But it was the start of. You have all these different memories. You know, I mean, I'm surrounded by stuff here, memorabilia from boxing and things like that. Yeah. So what happened was, me and Dom became like lifelong friends. We still scrap every time we meet. We still start the sparring. He's 61, 62. I'm 60 this year, and we just still can't help ourselves. And we've got that mindset where, you know, we used to go running, and it was like we wouldn't stop. You could feel it, your lungs were burning, but you wouldn't stop. You try to outdo each other. We pushed each other all the way through life. He went one direction, I went another direction. But he introduced me, when I went to that boxing, he introduced me to a guy called Norman Close. And Norman Close is one of the most respected people in amateur boxing in the northeast of England. Yeah. Still highly respected. We met world champions, John Davison, Glenn McCrory, Lewis Ritson, who was the fastest Lonsdale belt winner, I think, in the northeast. He lived with us here in Glasgow for quite a while when he joined Billy Nelson up here to fight with Ricky Burns, who came sparring with him as well. So we got to meet some real key people. But it was getting back to the boxing side of things, was what taught me was the respect and the discipline. That was the core things I learned from there. And also, like, not every day is going to be sunny. You're going to get days where you've just got to get yourself out there. Even now, it pours down a rain here, and the rain comes sideways, but I'm out there every day with the dog. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Things have to be done. You know, you have to chop wood to put wood on the fire to keep the house warm. That's the way we look at it. So it taught me a lot of life lessons.
Absolutely. Can you remember? You clearly could remember your first fight, but can you remember when you first got in the gym and how daunting that was? Like trying to learn a completely new skill as this, like you said, as his child that's been on the end of a fair bit of bullying.
Yeah, I was like a drunk hippopotamus on roller skates.
Very good.
That's the sort of coordination that I had.
Yeah,
I was
right.
obese. I just didn't have the stamina. I didn't have the energy. Didn't have the fitness. And we started to run towards, because it was I think that started on a Sunday. I didn't start on the midweek, which is at the time it was nighttime. It was like early nights, dark nights. So I
Yep.
think I started on the Sunday, which was a lunchtime session, and we ran. We started off about 10 o'clock in the morning to run to the boxing gym. And I think we walked. We ran a bit, walked a bit, ran a bit, walked a bit. So by the time I got there, I'd done a session. And then
Yeah.
we got in there to do another hour and a half of training, and I just wasn't used to it. But they saw I was dedicated. They saw that I was willing to learn, and you find certain parts of training that you really enjoy and certain parts you don't enjoy. And what was good about that box club, we had some real good ex-amateur boxers who are trainers as well, and they knew how to bring on the best of you. So they knew if they'd force you to do one thing, you'd probably just never come back. So they looked at what you enjoyed doing first of all, and then they weaned you on the other stuff. So I
Love
hated
it.
I hated the speedball. I
Yeah.
loved the heavy bag. I loved the pads, and I loved what we used to call a drunken sailor, which is the punch ball on a big spring
Yeah.
base, heavy spring
Yeah.
base, and I loved hitting that thing. It's fast reactions, and it was great. And the floor to ceiling ball, that's the sort of stuff I loved. Sparring I loved as well. So that's what they brought us into. So they concentrated on the good stuff that I liked, and then they weaned the other stuff. They said, you've got to do this as well. So at the time, stamina wasn't my strong point. And the interesting thing was, when at school I was embarrassed. I was always last at cross country running and things like that in sports. But within a short period of time, I start moving up the ranks and I start winning. And because I realized I had to do this road work, I had to put the effort in. And this is one of the things that Dominic was good at. It was like, he knocked on the door and we've got to run before we go to school. I'm like, no, we don't. We don't have to run before we go to school. He went, no, we do. We've got to get up and get it running before we go to school. We'll come back, run after school, and then we'll go to the gym, then we'll train. And it was just consistent, and
Wow.
he went on to become a professional boxer.
Yeah.
He fought at high levels. He fought Rennie Weller, who was a German champion. To me, he beat him. He dropped him in the 6th. To me, he beat the guy, but not to worry. So, it's high, a high standard of boxers that we're training with.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you mentioned there, I love. It was something that I learned later in life. And it was actually one of my, well, actually, it was probably two things. I was learning this, going through my own personal development journey, but also the boss that I had at the same time. He talked about like I said, like I'm managing this team for you. Find out what do I have to do? And he said, find out what they do really well, and really get them to do more of that, because that's going to help them win. And what you described then, learning that lesson there, so good. Like I take that into everything now, like whether it's coaching young children at football or whether it's adults,
Yeah.
it's like all the same thing, right? So is that something a lesson that you were able to, it was obviously fairly impactful that you remember back then. Is that something that you've been able to take forward through the rest of your life?
Yeah, it is. I mean, one of the things I've done through my career, I went through dead-end jobs. I was touted to be doing all the top exams and things like that. I walked out of all the exams, computer studies. I walked out. I could have got loads of top-level exams. It wasn't for me. I just thought it just isn't for me. I rebelled for quite a while.
Yeah.
And it was because I knew I felt there was something better, something else I could do. So I went from dead-end job to dead-end job. The funny thing is, every dead-end job I went to, I was very good at. I wasn't just sweeping the floor.
Yeah.
I swept the floor well. I worked at steel foundries. And the funny story, I'll tell you this story first before I tell you about how this has helped other people in my life as well. I went to the steel foundry and they had this job called a hole man. I'm like, great, what is this? And basically, when it's a metal casting, so they have these things which are cast and they're in sand, like an inert gas sand, and they shake them on the shaker on a conveyor belt. And they blast them with water to cool them down at the same time. So the metal goes up the conveyor belt. Below that is a big hole, basically. So it was about 8 foot deep, 6 foot by 6 foot. And when I got there was that much gap between the bottom of the conveyor belt and the top of the hole. So the guy says, there's your job. I said, well, what is it? He says, it's sand and hot water. So I went, okay, first shift. Start my first shift, I just kept digging and digging. By the time I finished, I was about 4 foot down. And that's second shift, I was right the way down. I got down to the bottom. So I dug out all of the sand. So if you think it's 8 foot deep, 6 foot by 6 foot, just shoveled it, put it on the conveyor belt and shoveled it all out. They'd never seen it before. This guy said, I've never seen anything like that. And I kept it clean.
Is
So it was
that
12 hours.
is that the discipline from and
Yeah.
respect from boxing? Yeah,
It was. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
going to do a job, do it well.
yeah,
If you've got to put the work in to get the respect.
yeah.
So for me, I mean, it was a job that somebody got for me, and I thought, well, I'll go back to them. I'll do my best for them. It wasn't for me. I was getting well paid. It was good money in them days. It was 225 quid a week. It was a dangerous job. And the funny thing about that job was the better you got, the riskier the jobs became. So, yeah, it was a funny place. It was a terrible place. But I met a few guys there as well who were ex-pro footballers who fallen by the wayside. They all working there. I met a guy called Mickey Bedlington, who used to be a boxer, then became a bare knuckle guy. Me and him used to have loads of fun on the night shift. A few bodybuilders and things like that. You know, it's a bit of a rogues gallery. But the respect that I got from other people from doing that, I was just basically left alone. You know, just get on, dig it, discipline. You know, one of the core things I learned was if you're going to be good at it, be good at it. Don't just do it. Set yourself the goal of being, I'm going to focus on one thing and get it done. And it was at the time I didn't do meditation and things like back then, but that was the closest thing to meditation, was just shoveling that and asking questions. You know, at the time I was training, I was keeping myself fit.
Yeah.
After that, I worked in brickyards, which was much the same. It was very energetic work. You know, you're shifting bricks, and it was very, very fast work. In them days, it wasn't machines; it was all by hand. Worked in the brickyard and did the same thing. And again, it was, I want to be the best at this. And although it was a dead end job. And anyway, the funny thing that happened after that was I started thinking, I'm better than this. You get this little spark in your head. You know, you think, if I've come from being a beast, I've got to where I am now, I've got to there. Surely I can do better. Let's see how far I can take this.
Yeah.
And I started to read sales books. And this was down to my mother, basically. She introduced me into the world of business. She worked for a haulage company where she was a secretary. I met the managing directors and things like that. Spent a bit of time with them. Saw the lifestyle that they had. Thought I'd rather have that than this where I'm living just now.
Yeah.
So there's got to be something else better out there. I saw that. My father, he couldn't shift the mentality of being working class. He was given a fantastic opportunity where he was manager of this concrete business where he made concrete blocks. He could have done fantastically well. He couldn't cope with it. It just wasn't his mindset. But anyway, it's funny, he was doing concrete blocks, I'm doing bricks. It was funny how that thing happened. And interesting what happened after that was, in fact, I'll go back to that, because before I got into the factories, the brick factories, I actually worked with my father in engineering. And he thought, you know, you're going to be good at engineering. I was quite good at welding, quite good at fabricating. You're going to be like me. You can be an engineer. And there's one day I thought, nah, this is not for me. I went to work. It was freezing cold. It was dark when I got there. It's dark when I came out. I'm like, I've got no life here, you know?
Yeah.
And this is the only time I've ever taken real notice of my father. And my father said this to us. He says, this is where you're, right? There's two options. You either get all the way in or get all the way out. And that was profound. And that was kind of like the same thing. If you're not going to get all the way in, get all the way out.
So you got
out.
horse
not in it. Yeah, I got out.
Yeah.
Ended up with other dead end jobs. But anyway, a few years later.
Just quickly on that, exactly. If your heart's not in it, you're going to end up resentful, and you're going to end up not doing a good enough job over a long period of time because it slowly eats away at you. It's good advice.
It does. It's like having a pebble in your shoe.
Yeah.
If you ignore it, it's going to grow and grow. Then it's going to fester. Before you know it, you need an operation to get rid of the thing, you know?
Yeah.
So you're better off get rid of it straight away. And that was good advice. But funny enough, I was in this brickyard and it was a dark night again. I'm sitting next to the kiln. The kiln was right here. It's red hot. And I'm reading a sales book. And it was a book called Talk and Grow Rich. Not Think and Grow Rich. It's called Talk and Grow Rich, which obviously ripped off from Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. And it was from an author called Ron G. Holland, who's now a friend of mine on Facebook. And I've done a bit of work with him as well. Yeah. Done some marketing stuff from over the years. And it was like, learn sales. So I thought, you know, let's see what I can do. So I bluffed myself into a job, a sales job.
Yeah.
So I was working the day shift by end and went, I'll see if I can sell double glazed on night times. I got into sales and I became pretty good at it. I actually taught them I was one of the top sales guys in the Northeast. They didn't check us out. And the first day I went out, sold the first house I went to with my manager. We made a sale event. I've never seen that before. He says, that's because I understand people. And it was just, again, I'd studied it before I went there. My family were in building and things like that. So there was an element. I knew the product. I knew they were glazing because my family were involved with it. I'd fitted glazing. I'd seen joiners, so I kind of knew the talk. I just didn't know how to sell, but I learned the sales by reading a book, of all things. Anyway, within 11 months, I was a manager of a Pickford's Removals, which is an international shipping and haulage company, removal company. Within 11 months, I went from that factory into management. And it was all because of that book and thinking, I've got to be better. I can be better. And then the core thing that I learned from everything I did, everything I've done in life is model other people. So when I was boxing, I modeled other boxers. When I was into sales and management, I modeled other salespeople and other managers. And I took their good bits.
Yep.
And I focused on their good bits. The weaknesses, they had other people supporting them for the weaknesses. So I knew if I just focused on what they were good at, then if I'm even 80% of what they are, even 70% what they are, then I've got a good head start on everybody else.
Spot on. And to me, too much of that sort of mentality is slipped away, and people think they have to do it all, and they get stuck trying to do things that just, like we talked about before, the pebble in the shoe stuff. You got too many pebbles, eventually you just crack it and you're out.
I think that's what's wrong with people, and I'm the world's worst. I'm the only child. I'm sitting doing a course at the moment, and I've got outsourcers. I've got people I can use, but I've got to go through the pain so I can show my students what they're going to have to go through. So I'll take the pain myself. I'll break it down. The old branch should be stupidly simple. Take the complex stuff. I think it's from the engineering background. Take the complex and take it to the MVP, the minimal viable product, and show other people, do this, do this, do this, do that. So I wouldn't get that if I used other people. So
100%.
That's one of my weaknesses, though.
Yeah, I also think that's part of it. When you're a business owner, you need to go through and understand it. And particularly if you're someone who's teaching other people, the best place to teach from is from a place of actually living it, struggling with it, and finding the solution, right?
Yeah, you mean like the 17-year-old life coaches?
Exactly. In saying that, like, I don't know if you've got children, but my two who are now one of them's about to turn 20, so older teenagers, they've picked up a lot of stuff. Now, I wouldn't say I'd put them out there and try to coach one of us, but they've definitely built up a level of knowledge that from that absorption and from just learning from those conversations that we didn't learn until we were adults.
I think that's probably a little bit facetious on my part, but if you look
at the true though too,
there is an element, it is, because you see a lot of this, especially on TikTok and YouTube and things like that, where people have come through and they've had one win, and I saw people saying, "I made $1,000 last year. I can teach you how to make $1,000." You go, well, that isn't a big win, Yeah. So when every course I've released over the years, I've got to do a minimum of 10 grand before I teach other people to do it. Because if it hasn't hit that magical 10 grand mark and recurring, then it's not a business. It's, you could have got lucky once.
Yeah.
And if you build, it's all about setting expectations. I don't want to give a false promise to somebody and say, do this. They go and focus 3 to 6 months on it. And then at the end of the day, they make 1,000 or 2,000, but they don't make that magical money they need. And they've invested a lot into it. And then they've got to go and explain the credit card bill to the wife and things like that, or to the husband. It's,
Yeah, and that's the other thing I see a lot of in our industry is people going out there and giving this is the surefire solution and this is the way. But like you've just been talking about for the last 15, 20 minutes, it's like we've got to find the thing that works for us, and there's no one size fits all.
No, there isn't. The funny thing is everything works online. Everything works online. E-commerce works, dropshipping works, affiliate marketing works, course creation works. Everything works.
Network marketing. Yep.
Doing logos for businesses, local marketing works. Done that myself. Everything works, but it might not necessarily work for the person you're speaking to. So they've got to find out what works for them, what resonates. It's getting back to what I mentioned before in the boxing. Just focus on what they're good at, and then ease them into the other bits. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong. They try and square peg, round hole, whack it in. And it's that's why people are failing so much. And I think other thing as well is setting the expectations of people. I mean, one of the things I tell people, it's going to be difficult, it's going to be hard, but there's the learning curve that you have to go through. and sharing that with them, that they're going to have the valley of doom or the valley of despair, but they're just literally 3 foot away from coming out the other end. They've just got to stick to it, you know. And that's part of our job as coaches and consultants and course creators, is to support them through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people get caught in that when they're in the dip, thinking, well, at times you do feel like this is going to be forever. That's kind of the mentality. And it's just remembering exactly like you said, you're 3 foot from coming out the other side. The moment you just accept that, okay, we're here, but we're about to go up, everything suddenly changes. It's when you fight that when you're in that hole that you just dig a deeper hole.
Well, that's it. Yeah, getting back to my job, the hole, man. Keep digging deep until you hit the bottom. Once you hit the bottom, you can only go back up. That's how I count. So keep digging until you hit the bedrock, build your foundation, and grow. But a lot of people give in too early, and it's because, and I believe it's the industry. I do believe it's the industry where people say it's fast riches, you know, push button riches, things like that. You can make 10 grand in 30 days. You can. I mean, I've done it faster than that. I've made it in a day. You can easily make it. But it depends on the individual. And I was speaking to Dominic the other day, and I don't know if Dominic's ever going to get to see this video. He's going to beat us up. But he was saying, can I do your course? And I'm like, well, possibly, but it might take you a bit longer because you haven't got that technical background and you have not come from a position of being involved with the industry of learning marketing, learning internet marketing, digital marketing, learning social media marketing, things like that. You've not come from that background, or course creation. So it may take a bit longer. And the fact he hasn't got a laptop is going to take him even longer, which I'm pointing out. Well, that's the first hurdle. So there's your clue. But it's, you know, it's setting people's expectations and working with the tools that they've got to support them and help them through it. So when people say to me, well, I tell you what, one of the sites I love Udemy. I would never sell on there ever again because you're not in control of your future on Udemy, but made quite a few thousand on there. But the structure of Udemy, their courses, what I love about that is they'll say, this is the requirements. For this course, you must have, and it'll tell you whether you've got to be a certain background, if you've got to start off with an MBA, if you've got to have certain technology equipment, things like that. They'll tell you what you need before you can take the course. Yeah, and I think that's what we should put a lot more on our course. And that's certainly what I've done on my courses I'm creating now, is saying, this is the minimum that you need. The minimum requirements to do this is what you're going to have. Set that expectation. And it saves people having to refund your courses. People say, why am I getting so many refunds? Well, look at your promises you've got on your website. You know, how can you promise that when you know that not everybody's going to come through and do this? Be realistic. Yeah, you might lose a few customers, but you gain a lot more fans by telling the truth. Because the next time somebody says, well, actually, if you do this, they'll go in, they'll learn it, then they'll come back and say, can I join now because I've learned X, Y, and Z? Yeah, you can join now. Come on in. And you get less refunds and you get much happier customers.
I remember a sales coach saying that to me. It's like, what's more important is the people you say no to that aren't the right fit than the ones that you say yes to. Because if you just take on everyone, well, then that's where you have that. Yeah, you have the refunds, you have the bad reviews, you have people talking about it, and having been through learning that and then having experiences where I sort of came out the other side going, well, probably wasn't the right fit for your course. And now I'm out the other side of it feeling pretty let down, that I just like, I want to make sure that the people are the right fit. So yeah, I love that. And that's probably true for not just sales, but selling shows up in all areas of life, right? Like trying to convince people of things. And when you have children, there's another great time where you need to sell certain dreams and so on. So it's like sometimes you just got to say no. It's not for you.
Well, the kids are the best negotiators, especially one with that ice cream, the line on the floor, giving it that. It's quite embarrassing these days when I still do the same thing, but not worry. Like, give me another beer, and I'm banging on the floor for another beer. But yeah. So I mean, but everything in life sells. Everything we sell you every day. Everybody sells. The people say they don't. They hate sales, but you know they wear makeup. They wear nice clothes. They'll dress in a certain way. They wear certain shoes. They'll have certain phones to say, look how important I am. They'll have certain bags. They'll drive certain cars. That's all about selling. That's all it is. It's a perception that people put out there. But and I do think there's been a bad rep with selling that it shouldn't be. I mean, it changed my life. But I went from sales into management. Sales management, IT recruitment, project management came off the back of that. But even in project management, I was still selling myself to my my executives. I'm still sitting there and do presentations to the board. If I hadn't learned sales, I wouldn't be able to do them presentations I was doing. I wouldn't have that confidence to stand there with C-level executives and say, by the way, give us another 20 million. I wouldn't have had that if I hadn't learned the sales when I was sitting in a factory, freezing cold.
And I'm drawn to the thought of there, like you learned from that process is that you need to get better at selling yourself, whether it's by performance, by working hard, or by being able to talk to people like you said. And to me, that's something that sport has been really good at teaching me, is like, well, how to actually, be okay with being good at things and be able to own that. So is that something boxing did for you? Like when you started to reach that level of competency?
Yeah, the funny thing is, right, to me, sales is communication. And it starts with the internal communication. And I think that came from the conference. If I was a fat, shy guy, which I was at that age, getting bullied, getting rolled down the hill at Easter time, so I looked like Easter egg. It happened. I'll be honest. I mean, me and the family laugh at these things now, I got called all sorts of weird names. It happened. But building that confidence built the internal communication. I asked better questions of myself internally, which then helped me to ask better questions to people externally. And I think that's what sales is. And it's humiliating having to go through that. At the same time, it makes me humble, but it makes me question everything I do. And I do ask better questions. And I do believe that came from the sales side. But the other thing that came from the boxing side of things, like I mentioned, the discipline. If you're going to be good, be good. Get all the way in, or get all the way out. That was a communication. And knowledge is power. And it was always just get your head in the book, spend a bit of time. And again, I see people try and shortcut things. And they just, I'm not the one for sales scripts and things like that in life, but I do think there's structure that you can put in life. And that's what I used to share with people. So we used to have this exercise in boxing where, and it was quite funny, I was watching Matt Basic, who's an email specialist, internet marketer. And he's lost a ton of weight recently. And I need to lose some as well, because he's a bit jealous at the minute. He's a bit competitive there now. But next to his boxing bag, he had the lines on the floor, which is your straight line where you put your left foot and your right foot off it to give you the L shape. So you put your left foot forward, come back, create the L shape. That gives you the style. So if you're orthodox. But he had his angle lines for when he's putting his foot to give the hooks, for when he's giving the right crosses. That's structure, and it's things like that is what you learn, and it's things that you take into life. So like everything, even in business, if you understand the basics, the fundamentals, there's a structure there you can follow. And if you can follow that, then you're shortcutting your chance of success. And it works in all sports as well. So you'll see there's a strength structure in a lot of sports where they have that same sort of stance, the center of gravity stance, and that comes from the fundamentals.
I was only teaching my 18-year-old boys last night exactly that, around balance and having your weight in the right place. What you just described there around structure, to me, we talk about course creation. That's now how I've done my courses. It's a structure where people can plug in their own information to be able to get where they need to get. Now, again, it's not for everyone, but I'm not telling them all the information, but giving them the structure so that they need to work out. So in terms of, like, I know I've had a look at some of your work as well, and it's the same way. Here's the structure. You can choose to go off on a tangent, but I can't guarantee that'll work. But if you follow this structure and you plug in your own stuff, it'll work.
It will work, but the thing is, a lot of people go and they try and give somebody everything, and they just won't. They won't absorb it, because they haven't found it out for themselves. There has to be this quest for them to find out something for themselves.
100%.
That's what happens. They've got to do that. I look at like Netflix, and it's quite a funny one, this one, because I don't watch a lot of TV. But we're on social media, we're on Facebook, we're better on Facebook. And you'll see somebody that binge watch this TV series, and one person say, I'm watching this because I'm seeing this in it. The other person say, I'm watching it because I'm expecting this in it. It's a different sort of mindset when you see two people going into the structure of a couple. Did you enjoy it? No, I thought it was pretty boring. I was expecting this to happen. This didn't happen. And it's just, they've got to find out for themselves. They've got to go on the journey. You can't just say, you might as well just say, I'm going to climb Everest. Don't bother with that. I've got a helicopter. I'll take you up, drop you there. There you go. Take a photograph, selfie. There you go. I've done Everest. There's no point to that. you've not empowered anybody by giving them that trip to Everest. Yes, you've took them to the top of Everest, but you've just got a helicopter, dropped them there. They've got to go through the journey themselves. So you can say, if I was going to do Everest, this is where I would start. This is how we're going to get to base camp. Well, first of all, this is equipment I'm going to need. There's going to be some preparation beforehand. This is how we're going to get to base camp. After that, this is what we're going to do to get the descend up to the peak. And that's what we've got to do with helping people. You can't just, as I say, drop them in a helicopter from certain heights, but people expect that.
They do. Yeah. And what you just described there is like how I look at preparing for any sport is the equipment, the preparation, the mental side of it. What are the steps I need to take, the process? And they're lessons that like I've learnt elsewhere, but when I think about it, I'm like, well, I'd already learned that, and I'd learn it from playing football. I'd learn it from playing cricket, from playing golf, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So if you look at, you've already mentioned the positive impact that boxing's had, but has there been other sport? Like, did you grow up? You said
cricket.
Yeah.
Cricket. Yeah, I was pretty good at cricket. And I'm really annoyed with myself. I chose completely the wrong sport. 2 sports. I was pretty good at rugby, which really paid us off looking back. In my 40s, I was working was I 40? I think I would have been early 40s. I'm Warrington in Cheshire, and we got invited to train with this team in Warrington. And my boss is a massive Winlaton Vulcans. And I mentioned my mother company who she worked for, a haulage company years ago. The managing director was well connected to the rugby guys, and he played a lot of rugby. And he saw me playing, he thought, he can be pretty good. He took me to train with these guys, and I just went, I'll stick to boxing. And anyway, we went to this place in Warrington, and they had the tackle bags. This big guy standing there, 6'2", and I'm like, I'll take him. And we've done a little bit of fitness and things like that. I was a little bit gung-ho. And as I went in, I tickled the back of his knees, lifted him and dropped him. And of course, they're like, whoa, who's this old man, you know? This guy's his 40s, just dropped this 6'2", 18-stone guy, you know? And I just basically crushed his back of his knees, and he went. So we went round, and anyway, the next time I came to him facing him again, he dug in, and it was like hitting a concrete wall. So there's like a fly's backside going through the back of its head, and when it hits a windscreen, it was like that, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the rugby thing. I used to love playing it, and it's one of the sports I regret not following on with. Met a lot of people in the rugby world. Still got some good friends in the world as well. Cricket as well. Trained with Durham, which is a big county club down in the northeast of England here. My mate Ian Somerville got me introduced to that. Did all right. Didn't follow it through. And the funny story was, I was at my cousin's, my wife's nephew's wedding in the northeast of England, and the cricket gear comes out. So I went, I used to be quite good at batting, and quite good at bowling, but quite good at batting. 65 not out. And I've never seen a bridegroom so pissed off on his wedding life than he was that day when he just couldn't get us out, you know. So it's sports like that. And again, it was one of these things where I copied different people. So, you know, I looked at different sportsmen. I looked at their style. I looked at my height. I looked at my build and thought, you know, and that's one of the things as well. I think that's what people don't do. You know, everybody thinks, so I'm going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, you know, you're 5'8" like me. You're not going to be like him. So, you know, choose your battles wisely, and choose your mentors wisely, and model your clear wisely. But that was sports like that I was pretty good at. And it was, again, that focus of studying stuff. And I sit away and I just study. So if I'm, for example, now I'm online doing stuff, I'll just take my stuff away and I'll just lock the door and I'll just study. And I'll see, how can I get better at this? So one of the things that I first did, my first course was SEO. And I did a course, Stupid Simple SEO. Got 23,000 students in that course. Launched it in 2010. That came about by 5 years before that, learning some of the basics, which I didn't realize what I was doing. I was just learning stuff. And I went, well, my YouTube videos are number one. My websites are number one. And somebody says, maybe you should teach us stuff, you know? How do you do it? Never thought about that. Yeah. But it's that. And it's the doggedness, the focus. And at the time, back in the day, I wasn't as focused. I just did stuff and learned stuff for the sake of learning it. But now it's like, I want to learn this, I want to learn that. And I have a journal here, and I'll write stuff down. I'll go for a walk and say, what am I struggling with right now? What do I need to solve? 3 to 5 things. Write them down. I'll go for a walk, or I'll sleep on them. And I posted on Facebook the other day, I've been trying to solve this problem for 7, maybe 10 days. I wrote it down before I went to bed, woke up, solved it.
Yeah.
Mindset, amazing.
100%. And well, my last podcast, this is the new one, and they're not going to hear as much of it, but they'll hear me bang on about journaling, and I talk about it all the time. It was one of those things I learned that just absolutely changed my life. And exactly like you described. Write down what you're having troubles with. Write down what's going well, and let your subconscious sort it out, and then we'll do it quicker than you think. And then it turns out that a whole lot of successful people either had journals or memoirs, and particularly the best athletes, they get it out of their head and they write it down, and that's why they're the best problem solvers.
I agree. I mean, I went through loads of journals. I wrote my own journal, put it on Amazon because it was cheaper to get printed rather than printing it myself. So that's what I did. I just went on Amazon, sent it to them.
Oh, we're going to have to talk about that, because that's one. I'll be actually looking at that, but maybe you've got some shortcuts for me.
I'll send you. I'll send across the Canva. You can just print off what you need. Not a problem.
Yeah, nice.
But one of the things I learned from me was the thing about gratitude, and this is one of the big defining moments in my life, was learning the power of gratitude. I was going through a lot of crap years ago, and somebody reached out to me and said, "Look, I'm looking at what you're saying. I'm looking at how you're getting back to communication." As a member of a salesman, internal, external communication. The internal communication was garbage. It was just garbage in, garbage out. And I wasn't in a great place. And it was journaling. It was like, write 3 things that you're grateful for.
Yeah.
And it could be simple. I woke up this morning. I've got a roof over my head. I've got running water. It could be anything like that. No, I'm grateful for the success and wealth and well-being of my family. It's, I'm grateful for the income that comes on a daily basis, which is ever increasing. Whatever it is, just write it out, get it down there. And when you speak to a lot of sportsmen, they've got that. Yeah. Now, one of the things that the flip side of that is getting outside of your head. And a lot of sportsmen can't do that. And a lot of men can't do that. Mm-hmm. And this is where I mentioned boxing. I've lost so many friends from the boxing and sporting arena who just couldn't get out of their own heads. They couldn't find the vent. They thought the sport was the be all and end all. They didn't realize that you've got a limited time. You're not going to be at the top of your game for all the time. You've got to look beyond this. It's great when you're in the moment, but what happens when you're out of the moment, when you step out that arena? And that's what journaling helped with. It helped me to get it down, just brain dump. And I had a stressful job as a project manager. I was doing multi-million-dollar contracts, projects basically. I'd done it in Saudi Arabia, all over the place, and it was stressful. So I used to I start off with Microsoft Word, thoughts and things. What's my thoughts just now? What's the things I think aren't going very well? Just dump them. Just get them there. And at the end of the day, delete. And sometimes what I'll do now, I'll write negative things on a piece of paper. I'll scrumple it and I'll throw it in the bin. The negative stuff, scrumple it, put in the bin. Yeah. I used to set fire to it.
Yes, same.
But I had a bit of a bad experience, nearly burnt the kitchen down. So, so I don't do that anymore. But I write it down, write the negatives, scrunch it, get rid of it. And I've taught my friends to do the same. Just get it out your head. It's basically, you've got somebody living rent-free inside your head, giving you negatives. And there's a book called The Chimp Paradox, which is pretty good. I think it's Steve Peters. It's actually sitting here. Chimp Management. Steve Peters, Money Management.
Yeah, wow.
Chimp Paradox. It's quite funny because my daughter met him on the train after I just bought that. It's funny how things happen. But it's getting that chimp out of your head, because that chimp, it's good for you when it has to be. So if it's fight or flight, if you've got to fight, that thing that we've got inside of us, that raw animal is good for us. Yeah. But if you don't feed it bananas, it's going to find its own way of jumping around that cage, and it's going to rattle around and just make its own humor, So you've got to control it. And that was what I found with journaling. And journaling was one of the best things I found. And now I've got 5 or 6 different things around us that I use, that I jot down. So I've got a personal one, I've got a business one, and I keep them separate. So
I might have to think about that. That's good. I've got all mine in one place, but that might be a good way. I've actually taken to the important stuff, putting into a document so I can find it later, because sometimes I've got these ideas like, when was that? So the important ones are now going into something where I can actually search and find.
Well, electronically, what happened is I was using, as I mentioned, I used Microsoft Word, and
Yeah.
I wasn't writing stuff down in the office because I didn't want people finding stuff I was writing down in the office. So I used Word, locked the computer, and then I started using Evernote. Evernote was the other tool I use.
Yeah.
The popular tool now is Notion, which is great, but you need a PhD learning how to use Notion.
Yes.
And it's quite funny. I was on Facebook the other day, and I'm like, I'm going to learn how to do this. So I want to learn how to do productivity. 4 hours later, I'm not very productive. I've spent 4 hours trying to learn how to be productive, when if I'd just done the bloody thing, I would have been productive.
Notion's a great example of one of those things that works for some and not for others. Because I had a mate saying, it's amazing, he showed me all these things. I'm like, that's cool. So I loaded all my stuff on there, and then for the next 3 weeks, I didn't touch it. I'm like, this is not going to work. Not going to work.
Evernote's pretty good. Checklists on Evernote's pretty good. Google Sheets is pretty good because, again, you can date stamp it. You can do a folder for each month or each week within the month, and it's just to get it out there. And that's where you'll find your ideas. You can't see it now because I've obviously got the green screen behind us here. But on the door, I have a white piece of card, and I use stickers, post-it notes.
Yep.
And I do like a Kanban system to do, in progress, complete.
Yep.
And I have that on the board as well. That works pretty well. And again, I can just write stuff down, and then I group them at the end of the day and start working through them. So
that's good. I'm very visual like that too. I found recently Monday.com, which has got exactly that. It's got the tags that you can set up so you can see where things are at. The key thing is something we talked about before, which is the discipline to actually follow through with any of these plans.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You seem really bright and really clear, and when I say this, it's because one of the big challenges that's been talked about a lot here is CTE from people playing things like rugby and boxing and the impact, brain injuries and so on.
Yeah.
Did you take a lot of hits to the head, and have you had anything that's sort of followed through from that? Any health challenges?
Yeah. I've been on my back once. Got knocked down once. It was a big right hand, which I never saw coming. They were hospitalised us, took a tooth out.
Sheesh.
Straight through the jaw. Hospitalised us. I was in for trauma treatment, brain scans, things like that. And then I had to go through, I think it was every 6 months for a couple of years. Yeah. So it was pretty bad. On the body-wise, I did my knee playing rugby. Went straight over the knee, 90 degrees.
Ouch.
So my knees are pretty sore. My hips are pretty sore. My hands can't really see there, but the hands broken.
Yeah.
So you're coming through all them sort of sports things. On the mindset one, the biggest thing for me, and I think this is where maybe I've helped myself. I do sometimes. I was doing videos today. I was recording videos, and I heard myself slurring, and I'm getting more aware. I'm starting to see more slurring coming into my vocabulary as I get older. And that's been over the last 5 to 7 years. I've noticed that more and more. Now, I am conscious of that because I'm also forgetting names. And I used to be in IT recruitment, and I used to be name for this, name for that, name for this, name for that. And
I've got a bit of a different theory that I've learned recently around physical health, and because same thing. There are times where I'm doing videos and I'm the same. I listen back and go, oh, what's like someone's been drinking or something. And it's when it's the fatigue, right? So you feel like we, as athletes, we get really good at pushing through, right? And just getting ourselves up to do different things. But it's the internal system, the adrenals, we deplete all these different areas that need to be there. And it's that real deep recharge. And actually I'm learning more about the nutrition of it as well. So I'm always looking at things going, okay, well, here's what they're saying is what's causing this. But is that entirely true? No doubt there's the impact of head injury, there's the impact of the physical trauma, the mental, the emotional trauma, all of those different things. But I always look at, it's never one thing.
No.
There's always a number of elements. So how can we actually lessen the impact by looking at holistically? So because I don't want to ever buy into something that says, this is what it is, this is how it's always going to be, and then just give up, because to me, that's just not acceptable.
Well, we just saw that the last few years when we were prescribed things that are now proven not to be healthy for us or for certain people. Now, I'm not going to get in that whole debate.
Yeah.
But on the other side, the flip side of this, let's look at other stuff. Let's just look at the sportsmen. So some of the young boxers, Johnny Owens, people like that, Welsh boxers who unfortunately lost their lives after fights. a lot of that was down to dehydration. They were making the cut, they were cutting the weight, and they couldn't rehydrate fast enough. So that you need fluids around the brain. That's the shock absorber. And I think a lot of sports people dehydrate too much. And so you take a knock on the brain when you haven't got that shock absorber there.
Yeah.
And it's going to hit a pointy bone. That's one of the things.
Yeah.
The other thing on the diet side of things, which is interesting now, and I was watching a program, funny enough, last night on YouTube, and it showed you the triangle, what you should eat. You should turn it the other way up. We've got it wrong.
Yeah.
After 50 years, they've turned it the other way up. And you go,
Yeah.
they can't just do that, And now
Wow.
we're seeing diets where they're saying the carnivore diet is good for you. So, that's the stuff I'm looking at the minute. And I'm not a fad diet. I'll eat what I want to eat. I think I had a shepherd's pie the night with peppers and things like that. Something different. I like steaks. I like something like fried food. I don't eat a lot of junk food. That's one thing I keep away from. But then I also saw an article today where they're now saying your breakfast cereal could be causing dementia and things like that as well in the UK. It's in the Daily Mail today. You go, that's changed because they're telling us you need your multigrains, you need this, you need that. So what is it? And if you look back over our society and it impacts sports as well, as cavemen or cave people, it was basically you had meat and berries. You had a few shoots and things like that. It wasn't until we start becoming domesticated, we start looking at farming animals, which was the meat, but also start looking at the grains, start growing the plants and other things like that as well. So, you've got to look through the whole diet of where we are just now and what the impact is on our life. And it's Michaela Peterson, who's Dr. Peterson's daughter. She was psychotic. She was depressed and everything. And she's just living on beef basically now, beef and lamb.
Yeah, so, I think that comes back to what we talked about before, finding what works for you, because there's a million different diets and some work for some and some don't.
Yeah.
The interesting thing I learned about the food pyramid was it was, and again, I don't know how true this is, but apparently created by the food industry to help them to sell more of the things that were cheaper to make.
Yeah. It's terrible. It really is. And, what happens is it's commercialism. People, they want to make money. And I want to take shortcuts. I mean, one of the eye-openers for me was the olive oil industry, how some olive oil producers cut down the olive oil with other oils, and they can still sell it in restaurants as olive oil. And it's cut down massively. And they go, well, that shouldn't be right. If I want 100% olive oil, I want 100% olive oil.
Yeah.
But a lot of restaurants are doing it, especially because the way the economy is just now, they're trying to save money, so it's scary. So the best thing is to try and take care of your own nutrition where you can, source locally grown food where you can, things like that. And that's what I'm looking at just now. But it's difficult because it's so expensive to do that because the commercialism's made it that way. They push people out the market on purpose, And
you can get too caught in trying to make all of that perfect and lose sight of what you want to be doing. So I think it's like with anything, it's just getting the balance right. Do the best you can, but don't be too hard on yourself. Yep. So if we look at that journey you've been on, was when you were a child, like it's not like we've got now, we can watch every game of football, we can watch like everything sport going on around the world. But did you have like a sporting dream when you were a kid? Did you have a moment where you saw something like, did you go to watch the Magpies play and you were like, right, that's me? Or like, did you have any experience like that?
Yeah, do you know, football was never the thing until later on in my life. I think I started kicking the ball around probably about 28-year-old. Up until that was all the boxing. Yeah. I'd got rid of all the other sports. The cricket-wise, I used to see people play cricket. I thought, I got bored watching cricket, to be honest with you. So that's probably shouldn't say that's Aussie, but not worry. I got bored playing cricket. Rugby-wise, I used to like watching people like Roger Utley. I like watching him. I'm trying to remember the other guy. I was in Dubai and met him, and Jonathan Davies. And we got a photograph together because we've got the similar sort of nose and we've got this arm over our shoulder kind of thing, And I saw people like that. Roger Utley, I ended up swimming with Roger Utley, and because he swam in the local pool next to me, and it was great. It was one of my sporting heroes, And so I saw people like that. But boxing-wise, I didn't really have. Probably the biggest hero I liked was Sugar Ray Leonard from the middleweight era, and moving into the light heavy. So Sugar Ray Leonard, liked him. Marvin Hagler, people like that, And I've met a number of these people as well. So they were my sort of heroes, but they were dedicated before they were in boxing. They were a different discipline. If you look at Arnold Schwarzenegger, for example, in bodybuilding. The things that he went through to move from one country to another country with just a dream. And when he landed here, landed in America, wasn't what he wanted. And you look at how he applied himself and became a bricklayer of all things. He learned from another bodybuilder to be European bricklayers, and that's how they made their money to pay for the supplements and things like that. It's people like that. I've never been jealous of other people. I've never wanted to be like them. I never want to get to that level because I knew how much sacrifice I've put into it. But I knew if I could get even a percentage towards that, what gets them out of bed in the morning, what keeps them going, what gets them up off the canvas. And typically it's the why. What's their why? They've got a big enough why to do it.
Yeah, love it.
And it's if you find that why, then, I think that was it for me. To me now, I mean, I've got sitting here on my dream board, sitting right there, and it says, remember your why. Got my grandson, my daughter, a husband, my 2 grandsons together, my son. Got all the family there. And I've got the dream, believe, achieve, all that good stuff. Do more, worry less, all that good stuff. It's all here, right in front of us on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things I learned from sport was to get rid of the negative, calm that chimp down, put him in his box, and just focus and just go for it and just be 1% better every day.
And I love all that, particularly the why. Like if we turn our attention to business, it's like you've got to know why you're in it, or you just won't keep going. And that's true for lots of areas of life as well. I'm curious. You grew up in very much that working class upbringing. Was there? I mean, you already mentioned it a few times where you saw things that were, I want to be a bit more like that. Was there a drive to take yourself out of that sort of area because for a particular reason, or something you experienced or saw, or just a day-to-day?
Yeah. For me, it was, I used to speak to people, and you go in the northeast of England, what do you do a living? I'm just a. You're just a what? And I went through all these guys are just adjusters. And then they start calling loss adjusters. You're not just a plumber. You're not just a joiner. You can be whatever the hell you want to be, And I didn't just want to be an adjuster.
Yeah.
I wanted people to say, well, he took his chance and he went for it.
Yeah.
And the horrible thing that happened for me was the jealousy that happened with some of the family, not my friends, the family. You only got the job because your mother was involved with that company. Yeah, but I got me to that. No, but it didn't matter. She got the interview. All right. So the fact I've been there for 9 years is just because she said, give me an interview. It's stuff like that, and it was horrible to see. And it does bring out the bad parts of people. And I saw a lot of that as well. So it is like crabs in a bucket. And you have, it's the environment. And I was listening to a book today, an audio book. I was out walking the dog, and it's all about the environment. And it was a story of 2 friends, and him and his friend got on really well. They're both very intelligent. They both went into coding, so they're both programming and things like that. This guy had a lovely wife, lovely young son. Then he got involved with one of his old friends, and they started playing video games, started drinking, started doing drugs. And within the course of 5 years, it didn't happen overnight, but in the course of 5 years, this guy, instead of being like his other friend, became more like his other friend. So it was like osmosis. He basically, his environment have changed, and he didn't see it because it just happened gradually. His wife saw it, but she loved him so much she didn't really think about it until year 5. He's divorced. He's lost his good job. His son doesn't want to speak to him anymore because his son's old enough. He's 5-year-old now. Doesn't want to speak to him anymore. He lost everything because of his environment. Yeah. And I think to me that was me. If I'd stayed there, I saw my friends getting involved with stuff they shouldn't have got involved with. I got involved with stuff which I shouldn't have got involved with, which was a wake-up call for me as well, because if you're using your hands, people are going to call on you. And I thought, I've got to get out of here. And that was it. I had the opportunity to come to Scotland for that same removal company. And we've been in that village ever since. We've been here nearly 36 years now. And it was, to me, I don't think I'd still be where I am. I wouldn't think I'd be alive if I'd stayed where I was.
Yeah.
Because I was either all the way in or all the way out. And if I got all the way in, then I would have been like some of my friends.
Yeah, sometimes no escape.
Yeah.
And it's a great point. I often look back at that, like my journey as well, at times where I'm like, if I'd kept going down that path, I think if I was still here, I just can't imagine the state I would be in, and also the impact that has on everyone around you too, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had some bad times. My mum was dying of cancer, and I got involved with the wrong people at that wrong time, and it really, I lost a lot of things. I lost a good 12 months of my life because of that. I made a wrong decision. I supported my family member, so I thought.
Yeah.
But it was a bad decision, and that was one. I was already aware by then, but all of a sudden I got dragged back into it. So that was a wake up call for me. And since then, I was like, no more. You know,
Yeah.
you've got a great life up here. You've got a new future. Your kids are doing great. That's what it's about, giving them the better future.
Absolutely. And it doesn't matter what age in your life you make that decision, but at some point you have to make that decision to
You
go,
have to.
okay, this is it. It's the line in the sand. It's stopping here with me, and I'm going to make the changes.
I've lost a lot of good friends. I've lost a lot of good friends, but the core friends that I want to have, I've got, and that's a key difference. And the friends I want to keep and have, the ones that, you know, basically the G on, you know, they're behind you, they're in the corner.
Yeah.
If I ask questions, they'll help us.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a great saying, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. So you find that some of your family members, like, they'll drag you down, or they'll be the ones that's egging other people on to get against you, which, you know, it hurts, but that's what happens. It's life, you know, a bit of jealousy creeps in. But you'll find core people that will support you. They'll help you up. And one of the things I've also learned as well, which is a lot of things that we don't do, is ask for help. Ask other people. Reach out. You say, by the way, I've noticed you're quite good at this. Can you give us a hand? And 9 times out of 10 they will. And the funny thing is, it's the most successful and the most busiest people who will help you more than people who, you know, it's weird how it happens.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, that's like, I don't know about you, but getting into business, obviously it was around business and creating that freedom, time, money, all those different things, but also because I wanted to help people. Like, and if you lose sight of that, you lose sight of that why. And that's, to me, that's like one of those areas where sport is just so powerful. It's a place where I love to give back. It's teaching younger people and older people, because I've taught plenty of adults as well. All of those really simple skills, not just about football, but about life and about mentality that you can pass on. Well, that just brings so much fulfillment, right?
But see, what I love about sport, especially big spectator sports, you can inspire so many people. And at the same time, you can invigorate people who are in the past them golden years. They can look back and see that. And when they see a good player, it makes you feel young again. You see something happen in life, you go, geez, that's a memory. You know, that's what it's about. And I think business is like that as well. Some of the things that I've done in business, when I look at something, when I'm writing stuff now, this course I'm doing now, it's one person. I was struggling to do it. I went through the mechanics, and it was like chunky, clunky, clunky, chunky. I went, hold on, you're writing it for Mary, so speak to Mary. Mary, if I was you, this is what we're doing, right? So on day 1, we're going to do this. Day 2, no, I know you're a little bit technically challenged, so I'm going to break it down for you. Day 3, and went through it like that, and that was how I did my first course. And when you have people reach out and go, you've changed my life. I had it. I'm sorry for the I don't bang on about this sort of stuff, but I love when you inspire people. I had this woman in America, and I'm at the time I'm in this little office here, and I launched this stupid simple SEO thing, and I got a message, and I was like, "Oh, okay." She says, "I took on board what you said. I think local search marketing, helping local businesses, what I'm going to be good at. I'm going to focus on that." She says, "I'm having struggles. I've got 3 children. He's not paying the bills. He's hanging about. He's doing his all." Oh, I'm not going to go too much into it because she's on my Facebook, and she might, I don't know if she'll ever say this, but anyway, she's on my Facebook, and she went, "I've applied what you said," and she went, "In my first 2 weeks, I've done $10,000. Is that okay?" And I went,
"Yeah, it's okay."
Yeah, okay. Let's see what can go on. And she lived in the Midwest of America. She focused. She concentrated. After 12 weeks, she took her and her 3 kids to Florida, started a new life for herself, got rid of him completely, paid him off. She said, "I paid him off, moved on, did that, built a life, rebuilt a life completely." Now she's in real estate. She's doing fantastically well, but she still dabbles with the marketing, which we did back then, which helps her to become good at real estate.
That tingles through that.
That is the hackles.
Yeah. When the why is big enough, right?
She had a big enough why. She just had to get away. And she didn't have any other options. She had to do that because she thought she was going to die in that environment. at the end, when she told me afterwards, it was getting too bad. The drugs were bad. The alcohol was bad. She had to get away from it. The abuse was bad. So anyway,
saving lives. And mate, I'd never want someone to stop banging on about those sort of stories, because that's like, even if you're not in business, you can make that sort of difference in people's lives on the street, and just bringing that positivity. Yeah, that's awesome.
I tell you one thing I wish we could do more of is a community. I mentioned about my friends who just thought they didn't have any more life to go through. They thought, this is the challenge over. What am I going to do now? I just wish that we could help people like that, sports people who've got. And I do think it's a case where sometimes they feel a bit embarrassed. They feel like they shouldn't be reaching out to people because they've been former champions, or they've been at quite a high level, to ask for support and help. And I do think there should be more of us reaching out to these guys and saying, guess what? I'll set you up with a part-time business. I'll help you build it. We'll get you set up. You tell me who you want to work with, and to support these guys. And it's the same. It's the same with veterans as well. It's not just sports people. It's veterans as well. If we can support people like that, and I think as a community, it'd be great if we could do that, rather than, because I think there's just too many people just hitting brick walls and just not realizing that there is light at the end of the tunnel.
I love that. I think I'm going to talk to you more about that, because I really love that idea, because I'm a big fan of what sport can do, but it's also like, people have come out the other side. Like, they're the ones that need most help, the ones who are in the system and they've got their structure and they know where they've got to be, and they get told all these different things, but then you're removed from the structure, right? What we talked about at the start. Providing something that gives them a structure.
If that discipline's gone, if you get them in the morning, you're training, here's your diet, you've got your diet sheet, you must eat this. Professional footballers in the UK, this is your diet sheet, this is your training regime, this is when you start, this is when you finish, this is what you can have an evening meal. They tell you what time you've got to go to bed. Then all of a sudden, they've got all this money in the bank, or some have, some haven't, and then they've got too much free time, or they've got no money and too much free time. And they've got these chimps running about the mind going, keep me active. And their body's being so destroyed through being at the top of their game with arthritis and whatever, or head damage, whatever. They've taken to beverages because they've been away from it. So it's like, you can't have a drink, and all of a sudden you can have a drink. It's like, they let themselves go sometimes. And I think if we can help them with that and get them through that and give them some other interest and give them another why, a bigger why, I think we can maybe help more people than just watching what happens, unfortunately, too often.
Absolutely.
Anyway, we should finish us on a high, not like this.
Well, I'm gonna ask you a question, which I hopefully leave us on a high. You mentioned before, even at an older age, and you go and you watch an event, and you just have this moment that just reinvigorates everything. And for me, in 2005, my dad passed away, and in 2000 later that year, the Australian football team that had missed the World Cup 32 years in a row, and we'd had that many heartbreaks, and I nearly didn't go to the game because I'm like, I don't know if I can sit through another heartbreak. And I dragged myself there, and I'm like, well, if they win this time, I've got to be there. And that, like, the next day after that, I just cried and cried and cried because of just it would have been a tough year, and it was tears of joy, but it was also just a release of. And it really, every time I watch it, I tear up now. Every time I hear the stories, I like it fascinating, because it was such an important, positive moment in a really tough year. Do you have a moment like that that's impacted you the same way any time from when you first started boxing through to now?
I've got a funny one for you.
Yeah.
And it's a sales one. It's sales and boxing combined.
Yeah.
And I was working in the fact, well, to start this job, to get involved in removals, I went from earning about 14 grand a year in the factories, and they give me 6,000, so half the wage. And I said, if you're going to pay me that, I'm going to sell double glazing in the night time. And I said, if you agree to that, I'll take the job. So we actually came to the job, Glasgow for the interview, drove all the way back to Newcastle, he agreed to it anyway. So I went up to this house, and it was a massive house, and this guy went, I don't know why you're here. I don't want you here. The wife's got you here. I'm not interested in double glazing. Well, that's fine. I says, what are you doing? I'm watching the boxing. I said, well, that's where I'd rather be. I'd rather be watching the boxing. He says, come on in. So I walked in, sat in the living room. I looked, and he had a fireplace with the photographs of his son either side of it, had a big clock. His son's, I says, I know your son. So what? I says, I fought him 3 weeks ago. And he went, did you? I says, yeah, I fought him 3 weeks ago. And he went, you from Granger Park? Well, yeah, I'm from Granger Park. He went, oh, I recognise you now. Sit down. He says, do you want a can? I went, okay, I'll give you a can. So I had a can. And we watched the fight of the century to me. Sugar Ray Leonard, Marvin Hagler.
Wow.
And he had more money than me. He had a fast speed, one of these recorders, VHS recorders. It wouldn't work on ours, but he taped it for us anyway, which I thought was great. I sat there, we watched the boxing together. I had one can drink with him. We had chats, we chewed the fat. He showed me the prices of the competitors. Can you beat them? I went, yeah. I made $1,500 in sales. Well, £1,500 it was. £1,500 in sales, sitting watching a boxing match. So, and it was bringing together the sales, the internal communication. I could have stepped away and said, well, okay, if you're not interested, I actually pushed to get through the door. I did say, I'm here, I might as well have a look. Yeah. And then it was a communication, it was a boxing that all brought it together. Yeah. We had a common interest. We had a why. We loved the passion. We were passionate about the sport. It was a bit of a weird one. And then since then, I had another good one with me. Was playing football with my kids. Last week, I was at Celtic Park training ground, which is a Scottish team, Scottish Premiership team, kicking a ball with my grandson. I'm a Rangers fan. He kind of is as well, but he's more like in Newcastle. But we're a professional football ground, kicking the football backwards and forwards. Memories of me and my son playing 5-a-side together and 7-a-side together. And I went down the left, he passed the ball, I scored. He went down the right, I passed the ball, he scored. And the whole team just stopped and gave us a round of applause, basically. So there's been some things like that. But in boxing, watching my friends become the fastest Lonsdale winner ever, Lewis Ritson, watching things like that, being there, meeting some of the most incredible boxers. There's a lot of sporting things, a lot of sporting memories.
So,
and you do tag things. I think this is the thing with sport. When you're going through bad times, when you get something that's good, and you remember if you tag something to that sport. So, yeah.
So good.
I still get a bit upset about some of the things, but not worry.
Well, that's a whole other story.
But yeah, I think the positives of that, and I think this is the thing with sport. To me, what you just mentioned there, if you're going through a bad time, but you've had family who love the sport, you see sport go well, it's great because if your local team does well, it lifts the whole town, the whole city, everything comes up. And everybody has like a different spring in their step when that happens. So it's amazing how much sport can change things. And I'm not too keen on the commercialism of sport just now, but I'm still passionate about my team, despite the fact the amount of money that came into it. But
we talked about it before we jumped on. There's as you well know, there's an Aussie coaching in the Premier League now, and one of the things I love when he was at Celtic and same now that at Tottenham, he's making it all about the fans. Yeah. And he talks about exactly what you described. He goes, like, this is not my team. This is the people's team. Yeah. And I'm just trying to put some joy into their day, not just because we have to win, but if we're playing an attractive brand of football and they're enjoying what they see, then they're going to walk away with a great experience. And I love that I talked before about, I'm quietly whispering that I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan. And at the moment, they've got a young German manager, and he's doing the same thing. And they don't sing to the team; they sing to the manager because he's turned their season around and still scrapping for a relegation fight, but because he's made it all about the fans, and again it's the language he used, and to me that's just one of the power. Whether you're talking about at that level, at the highest level, or you're talking about it at a local level, if you can bring that sort of positivity into what you're doing, instead of making it about this high pressure and this high stakes thing, instead like bring that real connection. And that's just one of the absolute powers that we can bring through sport.
Well, I'm a Newcastle United fan, and Kevin Keegan brought that passion to the Northeast. And Bobby Robson, we beat, I was actually with one of my CEOs, who was an Aussie guy, funny enough, Basil Scarcella. He used to be the head of FIFA for Australasia. He was one of the top guys. He works in utilities now. And anyway, I took him to the Arsenal game. We beat Arsenal 1-0. I was in the lift, and Bobby Robson walked in. And I've never felt a presence like I did, and a passion. Yeah. And he was so humble. And it was not about the money. It wasn't about all the airs and graces. It was about the passion that he had for that football team and giving back to the fans. So what you just said there, it resonates with what I experienced with that. So, awesome. They're special people. Special people.
Absolutely. Well, Phil, I've loved this chat, and we're on the same page with so many different things. I love how you
Yeah.
started there talking about what boxing taught you about. They found what it is that you did best and started there. And I think if anyone can take anything out of this chat, it's that is like find what you do easily and you are successful and do easily, and you can find a way to be successful at anything by taking that same path.
Yep. That's it. I think so many times, so many messages, people try and say, strengthen your weaknesses. What happens is getting back to like we just did with Notion, that, hey, time management, get shit done, GSD, rather than spending 4 hours learning how to do Notion. And I think that's the difference. So focus on our strengths, let the other guys who've got these minds work on that side of stuff, So I think that because we'll hold ourselves back trying to learn skills that we're not designed to use. Anyway, 100%. There you go. Sideline.
And Phil, we'll make sure we get your links in the show notes there. So if anyone's curious about how they can build wealth by selling other people's courses, or maybe even creating their own courses, we both use the same platform for that, which is an incredible platform which we stumbled across here. Well, it's not by accident. There's obviously a reason we're meant to. But what I love about, actually, while we're on this, what I love about that particular platform is the community that they've created.
Yeah,
and that's fantastic. How we met, right? We met in that community.
Met in the community.
Yeah, and it's a place where people are lifting each other up, and they all want success for each other. I love it.
That's how it should be. I mean, the world's full of abundance. I think the problem is people get a little bit too precious to these things, but it's massive, it's abundant, and it is corny. But the more people you help, the more successful you are. So the more value you give, the more value comes back. So that's the way I see it.
100%.
So all about giving back. Brilliant.
Thank you so much,
Ian. Thank you, mate. Been a pleasure. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Some real good old school messages there from Phil that are still true today. The ones that really grab me. Focus on what you are good at. Don't get caught up in those things that you're not ever going to be good at, but find out what you do well, double down, triple down on those. Love it. I'm very much a believer in that. And I also loved what he talked about is whatever you are doing, do it the best you can. Do it well. And again, it's like that's a discipline and a behavior that you will take all through your life. If you're cutting corners in any part of your life, you'll find yourself cutting corners in the things that are most important. So great messages from Phil today. You've taken the time to listen to this whole episode. Now it's time to take action. Commit to one thing you've learned today and make it happen. And to avoid any obstructions, join the Sport is Life movement by clicking on the link in the show notes.